Okay, I think we should be good to go here uh, in just a minute. So, all right, I think the stream should be going. Thanks for everybody for joining us today. Apologies for the delayed start. Gotta love technology. Um, but my name is Brenna Jasper. I'm with the Menominee Police Department. I'm a crime prevention specialist, and I'm just going to be kind of helping facilitate the discussion today. So we're going to start with some information that should cover a wide variety of topics surrounding an active shooter incident, including things to look for, what to do in that event, what you can expect from law enforcement when they come, and then addressing questions that we have received at the end. And some of them, the answers will be kind of throughout the presentation as well. But for anybody watching live, feel free to comment and leave questions as we go through, and we will try to circle back to those at the end as well. So I'm going to kick it off now and let Aaron introduce himself and the other presenters as we move forward.
Okay, my name is Aaron Berg. I've been an officer since 1995, and I've been with Menominee since 2000. As far as my experience, I'm one of the defensive tactics instructors and a tactical response instructor, but also a SWAT team member for a number of years. Currently, I'm the department's new behavioral health officer, and it's a brand new role and new initiative for our department.
Good evening. I'm Sergeant Rich Day, the Dunn County Sheriff's Office. Started at the Sheriff's Office in 2004. Started in our training program in 2009, training our officers in firearms and tactics. I spent 11 and a half years on the regional SWAT team. I've been to train the trainer for active shooter, also for instructing civilian response to active shooter through the CRAZE program, as well as ALICE system. Thanks for being here.
All right, good evening. My name is Lieutenant Chad Mroczenski with the Menominee Police Department. I've been with the police department since 2002. I was on a SWAT team, a regional SWAT team for 11 years. I'm a firearms instructor, tactical response instructor. I also teach tactical response in our police academy and train all of our staff here at the police department. And we do joint trainings with the local agencies here in Dunn County. So I want to thank you for those of you that are live streaming and those of you watching this at a later time. So we're going to start off with the law enforcement response to an active threat. And we'll talk about that later on, why we have that as an active threat versus active shooter. We feel that this is an appropriate time. You know, we have a lot of questions. School's right around the corner as we're starting here shortly, both with the Menominee School District and UW Stout. And it's something that was always on way in people's back to people's minds. And we just thought this would be a good time to get the information out there so that we can have a safe school year, and then also answer any questions you may have, especially after some of the more recent events that happened over this past summer. So if we want to get rolling here, my screen works. So we just always put this disclaimer out there. There's no videos that we had on this. This is a training that I present to different businesses, and it does have a video attached, but we're not going to watch a video in this case. But as a warning, just put it out there because, you know, we are going to be talking about some pretty heavy topics and serious issues, and we just want to make sure people are well aware of this. And we want to know what the definition is of an active threat or active shooter. FBI defines it as an individual actively engaging in killing or attempting to kill people in a populated area. And the reason why I put that active threat in there is because we know from our past experiences that this just doesn't incorporate people that have firearms. You know, they can be used, you know, with edge weapons or vehicles or bombs or anything that could be used to kill people in mass quantities. And so we just don't want to limit that idea that an active threat is only an active shooter, because we're encompassing just about any way that they could engage in those type of activities. So where do our attacks occur? You know, it used to be always just at the schools. We always thought it was at schools, but as you can see here, 55% occur in areas of commerce, businesses, retail stores. 25% are in educational institutions, schools, or universities, and 20% are happening now at you know, your churches, hospitals, you know, special events, any place where there's going to be a populated area. And as you see here, this pie chart, some of the relationships to the victims with the perpetrator. You know, as you can see, the highest one there is going to be the professional relationship. Academic is right up there. So really what we're going to be talking about today is both with our what happens in our schools and in our workplace, because let's face it, you know, it could happen at either one of those places, you know, and as you can see here, you know, it's not just segregated to one sector of our community. That can happen just about anywhere. And one of the things that people always want to know is, well, who's the attacker? Who do I need to look out for? I want to be able to put a face to the suspect. And the problem is that, you know, statistics are only as good as, you know, the next event, you know. So in this case, more in the last 163 attacks we've had across our nation, 94% have been male, about 98% of the acts alone. But the problem is there's no useful profile, because just when we put a profile on it, then it limits our pool of suspects or people. And then, you know, the next time it happens, God forbid, you know, that changes those statistics. You know, when we're looking at the individuals that might be juveniles that, you know, attacking the schools, 93% are pre-planned. Somebody or some person that have been reached out to and talked about this. You know, they've went through some rehearsals, they looked at videos, they've watched video games or, you know, YouTube videos, whatever it might be, to learn about what they can do and plan out where they might go and what they might do. 98% of the suspects have experienced some sort of major loss prior to attack in their personal life. About 78% have attempted or threatened suicide, and about 80% of the time, someone else knew about the attack prior to it occurring. So this really pushes the idea of, if you see something, say something. And I think Brenna is going to point out a little later on that where, if you don't feel comfortable coming to somebody, where you can report suspicious activity, you know, anonymously, you know, through the school district and also through, you know, Dunn County Crime Stopper. Is that right, Brenna?
Yes, that is correct. And so I'll provide a link for the school district in the post that will accompany this video, and Crime Stoppers as well. And the thing to note with Crime Stoppers too is that it allows people to submit online and anonymously when sometimes they might not feel comfortable calling in with a tip. And that goes directly to our dispatch center. So that puts you in contact with a dispatcher who can then relay it to an officer to investigate. If there is a sense of, you know, immediacy, always, or urgency, always call 911. But, you know, if you just want to leave a tip, those are two excellent routes to go.
Yeah, the link that's at the school system is mainly for reporting any bullying activity, but it's also could be used for something like this, and it goes directly to administration there, where they'll follow up and look at it, and they'll touch base with our school resource officers that are linked to the school. One of the things I didn't put in there is a high risk or at risk student that might be somebody that we'd be looking at, you know, somebody that has antisocial behavior plus a major loss in their life, like I talked about earlier, and depression equals somebody that is high risk, somebody that we definitely want to be looking at. And definitely somebody that even talks about it, you know, talked about, you know, giving you some idea that they might be planning something, or talk about, you know, killing somebody or mass killing, or, you know, telling somebody, hey, maybe you want to stay away from the school, you know, tomorrow because something bad might happen. You know, sometimes we may just dismiss these type of comments, but we need to know those, because we could prevent possibly something bad from happening if we get that information ahead of time. And like it says there, 80% of the time somebody knew about the attack but never said anything. And when you're looking at more, this was, that previous slide was more of the school setting. This now is going to be in the workplace, you know, because I think it's important for us to know. If we, we could have two different, styles of attacks that might happen. One might be from an employee, a disgruntled employee. Another one could happen from a customer. So we have some just some things to look out for if you are dealing with customer base or dealing with employees. And this goes with coworkers also. Somebody might be dealing with depression or withdrawal, repeated violations. Maybe they're terminated, outbursts of anger or rage at the workplace. They're paranoid. Everybody's out to get them. Some type of escalated domestic problem in the workplace. Maybe they going through financial problems. Talk about previous incidents of violence. In the customer aspect, nearly 80% of suspects had an identifiable grievance, either interpersonal, employment related, or general hatred for others. They felt the need that they had been wronged by some form, and they even probably projected that in some form, like either verbal or written, by threatening the company or threatening a particular employee. And usually that mental illness is not always the number one factor, because they might not be diagnosed, but it might be something that they just feel that they've been wronged or they're angry about something. So how can I can survive an attack is what people really want to know here. After we want to try to identify some red flags of what we want to look out for. We want to know how can we survive this or how we can better protect ourselves. We've like Sergeant Rich Day was talking about some of the trainings we've been through. The school setting, we do the ALICE training. We actually just did that this morning. Our school resource officer conducted ALICE training with staff at the high schools or at the high school. And so we're constantly working with the school staff in this with ALICE training. In the workplace, ALICE training also can be reused, but also another form could be what they call a run, hide, fight. Sergeant Rich Day, you want to talk a little more about the ALICE?
So all of our schools in Dunn County do get involved in the ALICE program. It's essentially an acronym, non-sequential: alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. This is essentially enabling the person that's involved in this situation to make the best decision for them at the time with the information they have. Without knowing that you could break a window or something to evacuate a building, you may feel like that would be unacceptable because you've never been told that you can break a window to escape a building to save your own life. So making the best decision with the information you have, that could be an evacuate, because the information you have is the suspect is on the other side of a building and you've got the means and opportunity to leave the scene. Obviously, that's best case scenario. But taking the information that you receive, however that information gets passed along, and making the best decision to save your own life and those that are around you.
Going to the run, hide, fight, it just basically as simple as that, right? If you have that opportunity, evacuate is the best opportunity to get away from the assailant, right? But once you commit, don't stop. Don't go back. Try not to. I mean, if you can help somebody, great. But that is only going to stop you or hinder you. When you do evacuate, it is best to try to zigzag or try to not be an easy target when you run away. And just like that, I said there, once you commit, don't stop. And keep on going until you find that you're safe from that area. Hiding, if you don't have the opportunity to get to an exit, if you're not close to an exit, maybe you're deep into the building where there's not a lot of areas for you to go, close the door and lock it. Barricade that door with something that might be in the room, like a desk. As you saw in that previous picture, there's a stack of chairs in front of the door, or something that you can do to try to prevent that door from being open. Turn out those lights so that way you can't look into the room and easily see somebody. Silence your phone so that doesn't give away your location. Get deep into that room and get away from any windows, any direct visual of the windows. Hide behind large objects and get out of that suspect's view. And if you fight, last resort, if it comes to this, if you can't get out, you can't hide, the attacker is imminently going to be coming into that room, it might be something that you have to do, and you have to make that decision. And once you decide, again, you need to commit. When you do this, you need to act with aggression, find anything in that room that could be used as a weapon. Something that you probably never even thought about, something as simple as my water bottle here that I could use as a weapon with a little bit of water, and this one's metal, could be used as an object we can strike, even a stapler, something as simple as that we might not think as a weapon, we can use as something that we can strike with. Fire extinguisher, whatever might be in your office, we can use as a weapon to fight against this person. But once you do commit, go with it. How we can prepare in the workplace, or actually in the schools, like I just talked about, the ALICE training. We just did that this morning with our school staff. And so we are constantly working with school staff and the students with the ALICE training. If you are in a workplace and your business does not have a plan in place, it might be something to create an emergency action plan. Just something that to talk with your administration or your management and prepare with. Once you do have the emergency action plan, you need to practice it. Put pen to paper and do tabletop exercises. Practice it, doing in drills. You can involve law enforcement in some of these trainings because we can maybe help point out things that you might not have thought about, or give you some ideas that you didn't previously think about. And like I talked about earlier, conducting tabletop exercises, knowing your immediate exits routes. If you're in an office area, know exactly where to go. Designate a reunification site in the event that the active shooter does occur. This reunification site is something that you could put at a distance away, where you locate an area that is known to everybody in your business or wherever you work. So that way you can account for everybody in some place where you can be safe and account for everybody that had left that building. And just that, how can you alert staff if the suspect is in a lobby? If you start hearing something and you can hear somebody's dealing with somebody in a lobby or a front office, how do you alert that? Who can alert that? And make sure that everybody's aware that at any moment somebody could help alert the law enforcement so they can respond and help out. And again, what to do if a customer presents a weapon, demands money, gets angry, threatens staff. Come up with these responses to these type of issues they might see. And again, educate your staff, how to de-escalate angry customer or staff member, and what do you do in the events that if you do have an attack or if you do have a holdup at your business, and how to respond to those type of things. Come up with these plans that and not wait until the last minute. And then talk to your staff. If you do have something like a panic button like they do at banks or at maybe some convenience stores, when can you push that panic button? One of the misconceptions is if I push the panic button, emergency services is going to come, and we think about that, and somebody might have a heart attack, and we think, oh, if I push the panic button, I'll get the emergency services here quicker than calling 911. Well, unfortunately, the panic button is only going to respond or have officers respond and not emergency medical staff, and so you might lose valuable time. So educate your staff on when to push a panic button. And again, who can contact 911? I think anybody in your office should be able to call 911. It shouldn't just be relying on the person that is dealing with the threat.
I'll just chime in super fast before we move on, because in working with some businesses, I know it's been a concern if there's only like maybe one person working or two, like they don't want to obviously call 911 when somebody's escalated in their place of business. So and maybe it was Aaron, it was you that had recommended this, but what we've advised other people to do is, for a business, know your neighbors and have something set up where, if I text you the word cookie, there's an emergency and you call 911 to get them over to my place of business. And it's been effective the couple of times where it's been done. So sometimes thinking outside the box can help a little bit, but we understand that there are situations too where you don't want to necessarily, pick up and you're not able to call in the moment.
And moving on with how to prepare. In this case, I have a very first bullet point, something that's simple and easy, buy door stops for each of your office. If you're in a workplace, if you're a teacher and you work at a school, this might be a good opportunity, to help barricade that door. Just something as a couple bucks, plastic door stops work awesome to be able to use as a barricade if you don't have enough equipment in your office or the area to stop somebody from coming in. First aid kits in multiple locations, is always a good idea, because you always use them, not just in these type of scenarios, but it's good to have. And think about what you would do if, and come up with the if. The if could be just about anything, like I had in that previous slide. What if you have somebody wants to do a hold up at your place? What if you have a disgruntled customer? What happens if you have a disgruntled employee? In law enforcement, excuse me, one of the things we teach our new officers is to do this. What if? How would you handle it? How would you respond to these type of games? So you can start mentally preparing yourself for these type of scenarios, so that way you're not trying to think on your feet at that exact time.
Do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I think we think about this on occasion, and if your organization is, does have plans, it gets discussed every once in a while. But basically, I as an individual know my own workspace, and I need to start looking and planning ahead at all the contingencies. The other thing is, as Chad has been talking about, these are high stress, high threat incidents where that classic run, fight or flight type of situation happens within us, and if you get stuck by fear, the inaction can be deadly. And so by taking this opportunity to think about things, trying to anticipate what might happen, might help you overcome that initial fear, and kind of kick it into gear and get moving.
Some of the keys of survival, like we talked about, we've already talked about the run, hide, fight. Definitely calling 911 as soon as you can, and how to react when law enforcement arrives. So we kind of talked about what to look for, what you can do and prepare yourself, what you can do in the moment, but what happens now once law enforcement arrives. Prior to that, you want to come up with adopt that survival mindset during times of crisis, like Aaron talked about. We don't know how we're going to respond to crisis situations, but if we prepare ourselves and we think about how we're going to respond, we can start mentally preparing ourselves for that. Everybody responds, like Aaron said, differently. You initially freeze, you might be angry, who knows what your response is going to be in a time of crisis, until it actually happens. But if you wait until that moment, if you think it's never going to happen here, it's never going to be, my workplace is safe, or we're living in Menominee where nothing happens, you're setting yourself up for failure. And it'd be better off being prepared and not happening versus it happening and you're not prepared, and now you may end up freezing, or you may not have that response like you'd want to. So doing anything is better than doing nothing at all, is basically what we're getting to. You may not have the best plan, but a plan in action or doing something is going to be better than freezing and doing nothing at all. So I know one of the questions that came up was, what happens when law enforcement does arrive? The biggest thing is going to be to stay calm and don't scream. Don't run towards them. When we get there, don't run towards the officer. Because remember, we're getting there. We don't know the situation. We don't know. We may not have a description of the suspect. We may not even know who you are compared to the suspect. So by the running and screaming and coming towards us, we may deem you as a threat. So again, no sudden movements. Realize the officer's first priority when they do arrive is going to be stop the threat and secure the area, which means we may be bypassing, and we will be bypassing the injured or people that are hiding in order to get to that threat and make sure that they're stopped the killing. And even for injured officers, if we show up, we bypass injured officers. because we're going right straight to that threat. And our main goal is to stop the threat. Once that threat is stopped, once that area is secured, now we can start working on, getting people evacuated, getting them people the medical help they need, and start controlling that area. Keep your hands where officers can see them. One of the things we look for, obviously weapons are going to be in the hands, and if we don't know who you are compared to the suspect, if you put your hands up in the air and we can see that you have empty hands, we know that at that point you're not a threat, and then we can move on and not have to deal with you at that point. Follow our directions. We may be yelling, we may be screaming, we may be giving directions, so follow those directions. More often than not, it's going to be, let me see your hands, or, move off to the side, or run and get out of here. And one of the other questions that came up with, what happens if a CCW permit holder is on site and has disarmed the suspect or stopped the threat? What should we do? In these instances, remember, again, I go back to, we don't know who the suspect might be, and you're not easily identified. Even if you do have a permit, we don't know you from the suspect, and if all we see is a person holding a gun over a person that's laying on the floor, we may think you might be the suspect. So the best thing you could do is, prior to law enforcement get there, if you can do so safely, holster your weapon or set it down alongside you, and keep your hands up where we can see them and follow direction. You may even say, I'm a CCW holder or a CCW permit holder. Great, fine, but there's a gun in the area or the gun on your hip. We may end up putting you in handcuffs momentarily until we get things settled or sorted out. Just expect that that's what's going to happen. And don't, again, goes back to the first couple of bullet points there, no sudden movements, because we don't know that you are a friendly or somebody that is not a threat to us. Anything else there, guys want to chime in with? So as a parent, if you're responding to an active shooter scenario or situation that might have happened at one of our schools, what can you expect at this point as a parent? Well, very first one, I know it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be to stay calm and do not respond to the school area where the attack occurred. Many of our officers do have kids in a school district, so I get it. You're going to want to go straight there and try to find your son or daughter, and all it's going to do is cause more problems for us if you show up on the scene and trying to get into the school. I think we just had that happen just a few weeks ago down in Arizona. They had a lockdown at a school. Suspect tried again, but he never did. The officers were in the school trying to clear the school, and all of a sudden now they had to deal with a bunch of parents coming in trying to get into the school to get their kids. And all that does is distract us from trying to make sure your kids are safe and trying to expedite the process where we can reunify you with your child. So again, I know it's going to be difficult. Stay calm. Do not respond to that area. Know that at some point, once we get things under control and we're able to start evacuating students, we will notify you with what we call a reunification site. And this is going to be someplace that's going to be offsite, away from the school or the area where the attack occurred, where now we can make sure it's safe, it's secured, and we can put the students in one area, the parents in another area, and we can start reunifying family members. Or more than likely, what's going to happen is we're going to probably at some point make sure that that your child or your student is safe for sure, no injuries. Probably make sure that they we might have to interview them, get their information, and then we also have to make sure that you are their parents. So make sure you bring your ID, and there will be a process in order to make sure they reunite you with your family member. If at all, let's say that your son or daughter was able to get out of that school, that area, and they do have contact with you prior to that reunification site being established, we ask that you contact the school district with that information that your son or daughter is safe and accounted for with you, so that way we can account for all of our students. And again, this process is going to be very long, so you have to be patient. This is going to take some time, and it may not be immediately after law enforcement arrives. It may take an hour, couple hours, 2 to 3 hours, until we can get to each one of the students, get them off site, get them into a location, make sure they're safe, make sure they don't need any medical attention, and then, start working with family members. But if you show up on site, all it's going to do is hinder our progress to be able to expedite that, and also to address the threat that may still be active on scene. Another thing I put up here is, as a parent, you might hear certain phrases or terminology that might come out. I know the school district will send out information if there is a lockdown or a lockout or evacuation, and just kind of educate you on what those might be and what they might entail when you have a lockdown. When we call it a lockdown, that means a school is in lockdown mode. An active threat is inside the building, which means our students and faculty members will, conduct their, just like we do with our ALICE training, right? They might be locking themselves in their room, doors are locked, and they're not leaving, or if they did leave, they're not coming back to that site. But that if in a lockdown scenario or situation, active threat is inside the building. If it's a lockout, that means that us as law enforcement have contacted the school because there is a threat outside the building or near the building. It may not be a person that's trying to get in the building. It might be just a situation or scenario, where a suspect in a different case happens to be close by a school, and we'll contact the school and say, hey, we have an active threat in the area. We need you to do a lockout. And when you do a lockout, that just means that nobody can come and go from the building. The students are still going through their normal day. They're still going through the classroom activities. They're not hiding, but people are restricted from leaving or coming into the building. Evacuate is students are moving to a designated area. Maybe if there is a fire or a bomb threat, something will evacuate them from the school to go to a designated area. If it's a shelter, this is due to a hazard, usually typically your tornadoes or hazmat, or if there's a bomb in the area and we don't want anybody leaving the school. Brenna, do we have any questions that popped up? Otherwise, we can go into some of the other discussions that we had earlier.
I have not seen any specific questions, so we can move to some of the ones that have been submitted, but just a reminder for anybody watching, feel free and put any questions you might have as a comment on the video thread, and I'm kind of monitoring that, and then we can address any questions you have while you're watching live.
I know one of the questions that came up with, should you pull a fire alarm if there's an active shooter in your building? The answer to that is no. We don't want to have a mass exodus of people coming in or an area where the suspect might be. Again, alerting, having some type of alert system in your business or area that you work, in the school district or the schools will announce over the PA system, and then that way we can lock in place, lock down in place. So that way we're not, getting in the way of the suspect or we're becoming easy targets. So definitely not pulling a fire alarm is we don't suggest that. One of the things
with that alert system, that PA, that phone system announcement, try to avoid code words. We don't use this stuff frequently enough to say, okay, this is a code red and everybody knows what you're talking about. Just say what it is. There's a subject with a knife. There's a combative subject out in the lobby. Give your people exactly what you're seeing. Try to avoid those code words. Just simplify it and say what it is.
One of the other questions that came up with as far as what are the current laws regarding concealed carry into churches, and what do you recommend churches do to make our buildings and events safer? As far as with the CCW permit, there's nothing that restricts you from going into a church unless they post something on the church that says, no weapons allowed in this building. That'd be the only thing that's stopping you. As far as with, what you can do to make your buildings and events safer is just that we just talked about, pre-plan and work with your congregation and your staff to come up with a plan of action, emergency response plan in the event that something does happen. I know that some congregations have even gone so far as having armed security or people that are deemed as security officers that look out for the congregation as they're at an event, do practice drills come up with some ideas, some tabletop exercises. And again, you might want to invite, law enforcement on this and talk with us about what we can do or how you can better prepare yourself for an event and make it as safe as possible. One of the other questions that came up with, what are we doing here in Menominee that ensures that we don't have another incident, that happened like in Uvalde, Texas. And one of the things that we have done and we have been doing for a number of years now is doing an extensive amount of training in our community with all law enforcement. All law enforcement agencies in Dunn County we're trained at the same time and working together because we're all going to be responding to the same instance no matter where it happens. We've linked up with our fire and paramedics to also work together. We've done qualified training with instructors. We've gone sent officers training, with the FBI to come back and teach everybody. We work with staff at school. We go out and do presentations at businesses. So if this is something that you want brought to your business, that can be tailored to your area, or like Aaron and I are going to be going to a church next month, to talk about this. We're more than happy to put on a presentation for your specific area and talk more about it and kind of help you walk through some of the things you could do to make things safer and how to respond. But we've done large and small scale scenarios. We just actually had, an active shooter training at the Menominee High School. The last 2 Mondays, we had 2-day training, all day training with our staff. And we worked on different aspects of our response. We did a large scale training in 2019 from basically start to finish, including our law enforcement response, our response, what we call RTF or Rescue Task Force, where we worked with our fire paramedic to get into an area where we can now evacuate the injured or people that can move. We transported them to the local hospital so they can work on their trauma response. And we did this on a large scale. And thanks to Cedar Brook Church that helped us, and their congregation helped us with this scenario. We did that in 2019. We're always going for more better equipment through grants to try to put us in a position to win. And we review a lot of the shootings that go on and see what we can learn from those instances, so that way we don't make the same mistakes. Just the training conferences, the training we do at a local basis, we do a lot of that, not just with our officers, but with all the school staff. We go to different schools, we go to different businesses. Like I said, we go to churches. And so we don't just keep on training in one area, because we know that it's not just going to be at one spot that it could happen at. So, we've done a lot of preparation for this.
So we did have a question come in, or a request come in the comments. Can you speak to the CCW laws surrounding schools, such as distance that somebody can lawfully carry from school property?
The schools are pretty restrictive for the CCW permit holders. You can't carry on school unless you're in law enforcement. You can have in your vehicle if you're picking up your student and on the property, but you can't carry it away from your vehicle. If that makes sense. You can be armed in your vehicle, pick up your son or daughter, and drive away, but you just can't come into a school event or into the building carrying your weapon.
Okay. I don't see any more questions or comments from Facebook land as of right now. But you touched on the kind of the law enforcement response in general, what people can expect. Is there going to be a difference depending on the location, like a school versus a church, or it's going to be the same, approach regardless? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sergeant Day, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I think the response across the board is going to be the same. Our our first goal, our first mission is to stop that threat. No matter what the location is, that could be in an open area, that could be in a church, that could be a school, anywhere that you may have some type of incident. Once we stop that threat, the next goal is to stop the bleeding. Working with our rescue task force medics that we have trained up in this field, getting the bleeding to stop, getting them transported to a medical facility. And then once that's all done, things can slow down. But I think in general, it's always going to be, for the most part, the same type of response. Our main goal is to stop that threat.
Excellent. Well, I don't see any more questions that have come in. So with that, I think, unless you guys have any more kind of final words that you want to share.
I think one thing to keep in mind is don't be paranoid, but be aware. Be aware of your surroundings. Make that plan like Chad was talking about. Have an idea where your exits are in buildings that you're going into, restaurants. Most people go into places and the only exit they assume is the one they came in. So when you get in somewhere, take a look around, eye up your exits. Okay, if this happens, I'm going to do this. Just make that plan. It doesn't take long. It doesn't require you to be paranoid, but just be prepared.
The only thing I have to say is basically to piggyback on what Sergeant Day just spoke about is it's not healthy to live in a state of paranoia, but it is important that we prepare ourselves. Just like we do, when we get in a car and go drive, we put our seatbelt on. We start looking for, as we drive down the road, we look for potential hazards. So it's just no different than that. It's just trying to incorporate it a little bit and start to think about it and develop that plan.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of what Officer Berg was talking about is just that planning alone is going to put you even, one step closer to survival. It's, that not doing anything is what's going to be detrimental to you and your survival. And thinking about it, just even thinking about just kind of how would you do it? It is already that step in that right direction. And I can't express enough that if you have any questions or concerns, contact us. If you have any suspicions of anybody, contact us. You're not wasting your time. We'd rather find out that it's nothing than, be second guessing, why didn't somebody say this or tell us earlier? We put on presentations we all the time, for this topic. So if you feel that need, that you want it at your business or place of work, and you just want to have that discussion, we can come in, no problem, free of charge. It's a service to our community that we're happy to help. And so you can contact Brenna. You can email us at the police department, hit us up on Facebook or any of the social media that we do, and just, ask those questions, and we'll be happy to help you out as best we can. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put some contact information along with the post that'll accompany this video. So if you come back in a few minutes, you should be able to find that if you have any follow-up questions, or you can always message us directly on Facebook too. Like Chad said. Thank you everybody for joining us and for watching. And I really appreciate you taking some time to be a part of this discussion, because I think it's valuable information for everyone to know, just like Aaron and Sergeant Day were saying. So again, thank you. This will be on Facebook, and it will also be on YouTube as well.